A Russian warship fired warning shots near a UK registered yacht in the English Channel early this morning after the two vessels came into close contact following failed attempts, says the Kremlin, to establish radio contact. Well, the British military has had several close encounters with Russian vessels and warned Moscow in November that it was ready to deal with any incursion into its territory after a spy ship was detected on the edge of UK waters north of Scotland. Well, for more, let's cross live now to London, where France 24's Bénédicte Paviot is standing by for us. Bénédicte, investigations are continuing there in the UK to establish what exactly happened here. What more do we know?
Indeed, the British MOD, Ministry of Defence, has, as you say, been investigating after this UK-registered sailing yacht, apparently called a Bright Future, said a Russian warship fired warning shots near it in the English Channel this morning. Now, the incident is believed to have involved this Russian frigate called the Admiral Grigorovich. And it's important to note that it took place between the Isle of Wight and the French coast of Normandy, therefore outside UK territorial waters. The UK media are reporting that today's incident is not being treated as being linked to a really big operation just days ago, where Royal Marine Commandos boarded a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the English Channel. So it's understood that the UK-registered yacht was 20 nautical miles south of the Isle of Wight when these warning shots were fired, according to the Russians, to avoid a collision. And that was therefore from a distance of around 500 meters or so. The Russian frigate, the Admiral Grigorovich, is believed to have been operating in the English Channel, in fact, for several months. It's been escorting sanctioned vessels. It's been closely monitored over these last few months by a UK naval patrol ship, the HMS Mersey. Another patrol vessel, HMS Tyne, was actually sent after this morning's incident was reported, and we are told that the crew was safe, with no injuries caused and no damage. Of course, this was a civilian yacht involved in this English Channel incident. So the UK media are reporting that the small yacht, which has in fact no motor, it was a sailing yacht, was drifting towards the Russian frigate in what were foggy conditions when the Russian warship first sounded a foghorn and then apparently fired warning shots. And tonight, I've just seen that the MOD spokesperson has said, indeed, that the warning shots were not fired by the Russian warship at this English yacht, and that it was indeed an attempt to prevent a possible collision. And they do confirm and assess that it's an isolated incident and not linked to the UK's interception of the Smirtos, that Russian warship carrying sanctioned Russian oil at the weekend. So this situation is obviously going to be continued to be monitored by the British Royal Navy. But the fact is that this comes at an incredibly fraught time in relations between the United Kingdom and Russia.
Yeah, as you say, just days after the interception of that Russian Shadow Fleet, regardless of what exactly happened this time, Bénédicte, it's another reminder, isn't it, that Russian warships often do operate very close to UK waters.
Yes, I think it's really come into the mainstream media here, where the British population, I think, is increasingly aware, not just defence geeks or analysts and experts, let alone the intelligence services or the UK government. And there is some concern very much about these tankers, these Russian warships, escorting these tankers, which has been going on for months. As I was saying, that incident or that boarding, the first of its kind by Royal Navy commandos and from down by rope from a helicopter that seized this Russian tanker that was carrying this Russian sanctioned oil. And the seizure of this ship, the MV Smirtos, has been headline news here. Clearly, there's been a reaction, a public reaction. We saw footage very quickly of this seizing of this ship. I think there's been some sort of tacit criticism across the board, whether it's in Parliament or across the British media, about the fact that we've seen France, for example, is one of the nations that has been carrying out these sorts of seizures for some time, and that the British had not done so, even though they had supported actively, for example, France in some of these operations. So the reality is that whatever, even if it is an isolated incident, today's exchanges, if you want to call them like that, will really renew tensions and perception of needing to monitor carefully and even more closely Russian tankers going through, or Russian oil through the channel. I should note that the UK has a new defence secretary called Dan Jarvis since last week, as his predecessor John Healey quit over what he called a lack of sufficient funding for defence by the current British Keir Starmer government.
Bénédicte, for now, thanks so much for all of that and that analysis also. That's France 24's Bénédicte Paviot joining us live from London.